Y'all ready for this? Live.
That was used to obtain the search warrant has just been publicly released. A judge yesterday ruled it must be made public. And just now, the government filed a redacted copy of that affidavit, so there's still a lot of information in it that will remain hidden as it could reveal sources and hamper the
That's the issue at hand, right?
But there is a lot that it does reveal about why the FBI felt they needed to do the search. I want to go right now to Ken Delaney, an NBC News justice correspondent. Ken, you've had a few minutes to go through this and try to read around the redactions. What are some of the early takeaways?
Good afternoon, Lester. Well, the first takeaway comes from, not from the affidavit itself, but from the 13-page memorandum of law that the DOJ filed to the judge to justify why they had to redact certain key information. And they talk about witnesses. And there's a crucial line in here. It said that the witness information needs to remain sealed to protect the safety and privacy of a significant number of civilian witnesses. Now that's significant because there's been a lot of reporting about a single informant, a confidential human source.
It's a lot.
What this shows is that there was no one particular source that was crucial to the FBI determining probable cause in this case. They're saying there are a significant number of civilian witnesses whose identities they need to protect. And then I have to tell you, Lester, most of the information in which the FBI agent lays out the probable cause, the really juicy stuff, explaining the legal justification for the search, is completely blacked out. This page
that page is entirely blacked out.
There's a line
at the headline.
That says, there is probable cause to believe that documents containing classified NDA, that's National Defense Information, and presidential records remain at the premises. But obviously, they're not telling us what that is. But what they do tell us, and what we do learn from what's not redacted here, Lester, is more details about just how highly classified some of this information that they found in January in Mar-a-Lago is. So if you'll recall, Trump and his lawyers turned over 15 boxes of records to the National Archives, and they found classified information in those boxes. What this document now says is the FBI found 184 unique documents bearing classification markings, including 67 documents marked as confidential, 92 marked secret, and 25 marked top secret. But beyond that, Lester, there were markings that denote some of the most sensitive information in the government. One is called HCS, Human Control System. That's a designation for a report by a CIA officer or other human source collector of an interview with a confidential source overseas. In other words, a spy. These documents are so sensitive, they are never found outside a special facility.
Right, but they elected Ralph from The Simpsons to be fucking president.
Itself, but they are sometimes handed to a president in a very highly classified intelligence briefing as an example of the kind of intelligence that he sees in his daily briefing. Sometimes the briefing.
He shouldn't have seen none of this. None of this. I hope everybody who voted for Trump and then tried to hold on to the American presidency for him feels fucking embarrassed. But I hope that they wake up. Like, wake up, bruh.
Which means intelligence that is so sensitive it can't be shared with foreign nationals, even our closest allies, the British or the Australians.
Like, that's what I keep thinking.
And FISA, which refers to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and SI, which refers to signals intelligence. That's the fruits of communications intercept. So very, very highly classified documents that were found in these 15 boxes that were turned over to the National Archives, which, as we know, prompted the archives to refer the matter to the Justice Department, which then launched a criminal investigation, which led many months later to them to seek.
This isn't just about American national security, it's actually global. It's a really big issue. When you're president, you have access to foreign dignitaries, and you have classified conversations, and he was.
Donald Trump or others who might be.
This is everyone's security.
In this, are they named?
No, not that I can see here. Not at all. We don't see that. But to your point, there's an interesting paragraph on page 29, amid all these, a sea of black ink and redactions, that talks about the location of documents. We already know from the search warrant that they searched the president's office and some other areas, former president's office at Mar-a-Lago. This says specifically, based on this investigation, I believe that the storage room, F. POTUS's residential suite, that's F. POTUS, former president of the United States, Pine Hall, the 45 office, and other spaces within the premises are not currently authorized locations.
Yo, the Russian who pretended to be a Rothschild, did she have access to these areas? I wonder.
This suggests this is where we believe some of these classified documents have been stored. Obviously, these are not secure locations, and it's very significant that they use the term NDI because one of the statutes implicated here is the Espionage Act. Lester, and the Espionage Act was written before.
Wild. We're talking about a former president of the United fucking States, bruh.
That the information was classified, but it requires that it's national defense information, which most classified information is. And so the FBI agent here is suggesting that what's implicated here is national defense information pursuant to the Espionage Act.
Ken, I'll ask you to stand by as I bring in NBC legal analyst.
Oh, like,
Danny.
if you think that if anybody thinks this guy isn't doing time somewhere, like,
to presume that the people who gave that information are the ones that they're protecting.
Exactly. That information is likely contained.
it's like, why do we have laws at that point?
Black lines that are
Why do we have a president at that point? Like, what's the point of the office, right?
So when you start out on the affidavit, it looks promising. I mean, there's a lot of unredacted information in the first 10 pages, but in reality, that's mostly agent background, where the agent describes his or her background. But even then, some of that has to be redacted because too much information about the
will put that person at risk. Yeah.
Who the agent is, and that's something very important.
Especially with the Trumpites.
For now.
That's what we call them.
There it goes into the statutory authority.
Those
Almost
Trumpers.
I believe none of that is redacted.
Who are like threatening
No
the
surprise
FBI
there
agents. Like,
because
they're so
it's
dumb.
just
They're
a
the
list of
FBI,
statutes that are
bruh.
being investigated.
Like, it's not just like Mulder and Scully. They're real.
To page 10,
And Mulder and Scully might be real. I'm just
the
joking.
darkness begins. That's when all the redactions are line by line by line, almost completely. No surprise there, because I would have expected DOJ lawyers to go back to their offices and say, we can't reveal any of this.
Yeah, they
Any
can't.
of this that comes out will reveal witness identities.
I really
want to
read this unredacted. Like, I don't want to read this with the blackouts. I want to see this document myself. I'd love to. Someone please send me a
so many different overlapping reasons that the government had to keep this information secret, that it's no surprise that once they finish with the standard recitation of statutory authority and the agent's background, it goes right into full redaction mode.
Wow.
Again, not a shocker.
I suppose it's typical, but there's a real stress here on the seriousness.
Yeah,
of these
very
potential
serious.
crimes.
Stupid serious.
Yes. I mean, that's
I don't think
part
we've
of
seen
the
serious like this
persuasive
before.
Method of you're after all, this is a persuasive document.
He took
designed
documents
to
from not
persuade
even
a judge,
part of his
ex parte,
presidency, dog.
one-sided,
Like,
interaction,
what kind of
that there
a
is
imbecile
probable
does
cause
that?
of evidence
Not a
involved.
president.
There's even more of a game involved because the government doesn't want to reveal too much to the judge.
I'm gonna call him the guy from The
They
Apprentice from
want to
now
reveal
on.
just enough to establish
Fuck calling him
probable
President
cause
Donald
and
Trump,
get
former
that
President Donald
search
Trump.
warrant. So
Erase
it's
the
a
title.
persuasive
He did
document.
not
And for
deserve
that
it.
reason,
He was not
they
even
are
acting as a
saying
figurehead while he was a
statutes
fucking
that they
spy
think
while he
may
was
be
there.
violated. Even if those statutes are never the basis for an indictment. Even
You
if
can
nobody's
be
ever
guaranteed
charged
that this guy went
with
to
those
everything
statutes.
related to
Because
Obama. It was like,
remember,
tee hee hee,
a
with a
search warrant
flashlight.
was
Like a
at
kid
place.
trying to fix his
It
report
doesn't
card.
necessarily accuse someone that there is probable cause that an individual committed a crime. And that's a very important distinction, especially when we're trying to figure out what it is that this search warrant affidavit was based upon.
All right, Danny, we're glad you're here. Let me move right now to NBC News contributor and former U.S. attorney and senior FBI official Chuck Rosenberg.
We got a senior FBI official. All right, is he currently FBI or like formerly? He said senior FBI official. That's current.
If you're the government right now, are you wincing a little bit of pain that any of this has been made public?
Of course.
Yeah, you're wincing a little bit.
But you're also laughing a
I think
little.
They struck the right
And
balance.
his dumbness.
Danny did a really nice job of explaining
Buffoonery.
why so much of the affidavit is redacted. What the government did, and they were very clear about this, is try to protect sort of 5 categories of information. Witnesses, because we don't want any
He looks like an FBI
against witnesses. Law enforcement.
No disrespect.
because
Y'all
we've
doing a
seen
good
lots
job
of
right
threats
now,
against
but
law
like,
enforcement recently, including an attack on an FBI office in Ohio.
I want to see Merrick Garland
There's also a
speak.
statutory basis to redact certain information. Grand jury information has to remain secret. That makes sense. You don't want to give anybody a
stop
roadmap
scrolling,
to your
NBC.
investigation, Lester. The techniques that you used, the interviews that you conducted, because with a roadmap, ill-intentioned people can obstruct the investigation. And then finally, there are privacy interests bound up in individuals who may have come forward with information, but who didn't do anything wrong. There may be some suggestion, right, that folks who are not charged but could have been charged or who are at risk would have their reputation sullied. if this entire affidavit were unsealed at this point. So you want to protect their privacy interests. You want to adhere to the law involving grand jury secrecy. You don't want to give a roadmap to anybody who might intend to obstruct the investigation. And then you want to protect law enforcement officers and witnesses. This makes sense. The stuff we got was the procedural history.
150 plus documents retrieved in January, June the second batch provided by Trump aides to Justice Department, August third batch seized by FBI. Like, there's gonna be a fourth seizure, right? Like, didn't they just mention that we don't have all the documents?
But as a matter of law,
this is embarrassingly
policy, what the government did here makes perfect
yo,
sense.
like Trump needs to be on suicide watch. This is like hella embarrassing, bruh.
Perhaps more quickly than they would otherwise have moved.
Yeah, that's a great question, Lester. So I think that's why the redactions are so extensive. I think the answer is no. This gives the government the breathing room, the space to continue their investigation. I looked quickly at the affidavit. The entire second half, for the most part, is redacted. I don't know how folks could really divine who the witnesses are or what the techniques were, and that was the goal of the government here. So they have time, they have space. Their witnesses and their investigation, I trust,
the
are
word
adequately
secret.
protected, and this
I can't really
allows
see
you to
anything.
go forward in a thoughtful and sensible way.
Okay, Chuck, thank you. Let me go to Chief White House Correspondent Kristen Welker. Kristen,
she's ready.
President
This chick is ready. She just took a big breath.
See what
she's about to say. She's dressed great too. That's a nice pink shirt.
To maintain distance
Or dress,
from
I
all
can't
this.
tell.
They
It's at the White House.
absolutely are, Lester. In fact, President Biden was asked about this matter yet again today. He was asked if he had any concerns that national security had been jeopardized, and he said he will leave that up to the Justice Department.
He knows it
determine.
has.
I think what is extraordinary about this release is that it is confirming some of the public information that has been trickling out about the search at Mar-A-Lago, in addition to the concern about the national defense information that may have been compromised, as Ken was just reporting on. Lester, on page 2, there's also a pretty significant sentence. It says there's also probable cause to believe that evidence of obstruction will be found at the premises.
He's
and then
done.
we go to page
Anybody
8,
who thinks this man is not going to jail does not understand what's happening right now.
Of most significant concern,
Like, stop jumping on his Titanic ship and sinking ship. Stop jumping onto his, like, into his mess, Republicans. Like, just stop. Like, you have to, at a certain point, accept what reality is. Reality is this.
Improperly stored and not handled in the appropriate way, given their level of sensitivity. Now,
he did nothing right.
Former President Trump has been lashing out at this entire process. He has called for
He's a spoiled brat.
to be
Give me my documents.
an unredacted version, and for all of the reasons that you just talked about, that is not happening. But let me
Oh, God.
part of what the former president,
I can't even look at
on
him.
his social media site earlier today, he said, quote, "The political hacks and thugs had no right under the Presidential Records Act."
He's so stupid.
Mar-a-Lago
He's referring to federal agents.
And so he goes on to lash
Like,
out
approved, like,
at the search of Mar-a-Lago, trying to essentially make the case that it was quote unquote lawless.
He doesn't
without
even he doesn't understand the law, bruh. If he understood the law, he wouldn't have kept his love letters from the fucking North Korean leader, bruh.
Now, of course, you had that interview with the Attorney General in which he said to you, no one is above the law, clearly very aware of the fact, Lester, of the political pressure surrounding all of this as well, particularly with the midterm.
The point of a president, the actual intention, is to uphold the law and make sure it's upheld in all instances, bro. Like, who was it? Was it
under a microscope right now? That is why they were so careful to release this and to redact it in a way that they perceive to be appropriate, not just to protect the very sensitive information of this investigation, but to make sure that they are doing everything to the letter of the law. That's according to law enforcement officials. So this is being heavily scrutinized by this administration and the former president.
Excellent.
Excuse me, President.
All right, Kristen, thank you. Let me go back to Ken Delaney now. You had a few more
Okay, so
minutes
my
with
point
this.
that I was
Does
making
anything in this
is, like,
preemptively
a president is
respond to
supposed
some
to,
of the
like, make sure
defenses
things go
the former
swimmingly
president
according
has
to,
put
like,
forth?
the law and, like, justice and, like,
Well,
that y'all are
there's something
okay,
in
like,
this
you're
idea I
populist.
wanna mention in response to
He did the exact opposite.
That President Trump is complaining about, which is they talk about the procedures for handling some of the records they seize, and they talk about the use of a privilege team, which we've reported on, a separate group of independent FBI agents who went into the president's office, the 45 office, and looked for documents that might be subject to attorney-client privilege. And then they and
they're gonna have to go in again. They should really search the entire, fuck his bunker, his storage area, wherever it was. Like, they need to search the entire Mar-A-Lago premises. They need to search Trump Tower, any place he owns. They need to search Ivana, which one? Ivana. I forget which one's the daughter, the nepotism one. The one, the fashion, the handbag designer that the German chancellor didn't understand why she was sitting next to her. Check her places. Check all of their places. Jump Junior, check them all. Anybody affiliated with him, seriously.
Absolute authority to declassify documents.
Search them all, dog.
And then secondly, the letter says the president's actions involving classified documents are not subject to criminal sanction. And the second one's more interesting.
Oh, right, that was my point. The dude who said, it's not illegal, it's not a crime if the president does it.
All these documents. Most experts think
really?
That's not really plausible.
Who the fuck was Adolf Hitler then, bro?
The argument here is interesting that
was he not the leader of Germany?
Any attempt to impose criminal liability on a president or former
if he hadn't have offed himself, supposedly if he's actually dead, but if Hitler hadn't killed himself, right? What, we wouldn't have held him accountable at the Nuremberg trials? What? Because he was president? What type of bullshit is that? You're literally admitting to it being a figurehead position solely at that point. It's not illegal if the president does it. That logic is bullshit.
NBC political director and moderator of Meet the Press.
He looks familiar.
Chuck, preview what we're going to be hearing in the coming days now from both sides, people who will be on both sides of this.
Well, look, I think it's not going to change. And I just want to make a quick comment on the Justice Department would have been better served had they been more proactive with this explanation and with the release of a redacted affidavit. Because, ironically, everything that they did include and they did not redact is stuff that they've essentially confirmed on background to many of us that have been reporting on what was the instigation, what was the motivation. I'll be honest, I think everything in this affidavit makes it more compelling for why they ended up deciding they had to execute a search warrant. Why, for the life of me, in hindsight, when you have credibility of the Justice Department being questioned, arguably very unfairly, by a former president, I'm sorry it took a federal judge to do this.
Yeah.
Everything in here seems quite reasonable for what's in the public record. And, I go back to, I really think they did themselves no favors.
Stupid.
They did the sort of the larger problem we have in American society right now, right? The weaponization of vacuums of either information that's missing or misinformation. Everything in here, there was no reason why this couldn't have been released 2 weeks ago. And I just think that
that's actually a very good point.
We ought to not let the government off the hook here. It took a federal judge in the news media to basically drag out information they were confirming on background for the last 2 weeks. They would have been much better served had they been proactive and realized that in the name of transparency and what was necessary.
We've had a lot of questions, right?
There's nothing in here
that's
damaging to the government.
With the misinformation, speculation, the conspiracy theories, all that. That's what not informing the American public led to.
Why was this part redacted in the first place? I hope justice rethinks how they communicate with the public going forward.
Whoa, that is a great point. I love that. That's Chuck Todd. It's a great point, dog. Good for you.
What they suspect occurred. So,
I've been thinking that. I'll talk about that later. I'll elaborate, my thoughts on that.
This is a singular event. This is not the way this normally works, Lester. Search warrant affidavits are never publicized. They're never released to the public or unsealed unless and until there's an actual indictment. Then they may come out in discovery, but you're not going to see them very often. So to ask the question whether or not it affects the DOJ negatively, I think in their mind, they are thinking, well, this is a 1 in a million time. This will never happen really again. The vast majority of cases don't have to worry about a search warrant affidavit being unsealed. But in terms of transparency, I don't think DOJ thinks it owes any transparency when it comes to an ongoing
investigation. And that's a mistake a little bit. Protect people, but you also have to inform people. It's a careful balance, but
So DOJ would never perceive this as a strike against them for lack of transparency. They would argue and have argued that the whole point behind investigations is that they're not transparent.
Yeah,
There's a
I
very
get
good,
it.
compelling
I see the
reason why
point,
we
but there's
keep
a
information
there's a
secret
balance that's
while
supposed to be
we're conducting
met. There's a happy
investigations. It's to
medium.
protect witnesses.
Chuck Todd
and
is a
so
very
we
good
don't
point.
signal to the bad guy.
I'm gonna go
that we're
watch some of
going
his shit
the bad
after.
guy. There are a number of other reasons that DOJ mentions in its memorandum. So, in the sense that the public may have wanted to see more, perhaps there is a letdown. But even someone like me, a criminal defense attorney, who would love to regularly see what's in search warrant affidavits, I understand that while we all may be disappointed, this was not unexpected.
Like, it's not entertainment. This is
I wanna go back
politics.
to this.
But the thing is, the American people, it's like in business, right? Like the consumer's always right type thing. It doesn't work like that in politics, but at the same time, you are supposed to inform your populace. An informed populace is a powerful populace.
Sort of.
What's the
Let me
FBI do it again?
explain that. And,
Oh,
you
God.
know, I
He's
find
scary.
myself agreeing with
See, like,
much
he's-
of what Danny just said. So
He looks like he can solve like math equations, but also like give you like, hi, yeah, chop to like and kill you with one like,
at the beginning of an investigation, not at the end.
or like strangle you with like a shoelace, you know, quietly, and no one would notice. In a room full of people, that's what he looks like. No offense, dude. It's not exactly an
Because you're
insult.
at the beginning of an investigation, because you're in the preliminary stages,
Chuck
what
Rosenberg,
you know may not
legal
be
analyst.
completely right.
Okay.
Moreover, search warrants are only based on probable cause, which
Yeah.
is really the lowest standard.
But
that
like,
routinely used
to
in the
do this, you
criminal
had more than
law
probable
in court.
cause, right?
So
Like we're calling
the
it
showing
probable
isn't
cause
that great.
for the public, but like
information
you
is
knew
preliminary,
it's
and
more
you're
than
at the beginning
probable.
of an
It's
investigation.
certain cause.
So reflexively,
Clandest-
as a
like a
prosecutor,
ironclad
this is not
cause.
something that I would ever make public at this stage in the proceeding. Now, Dan
Yeah.
pointed out, and I think he's exactly right. These eventually get unsealed, typically after charges are filed. Once charges are filed,
Then we can see
the
more.
investigation is far more advanced, Lester. You know much more, and you're charging a case not on a probable cause basis, but because, according to DOJ policy,
This is absolutely
you have a
absurd. This is
reasonable
absurd.
probability of conviction.
Absurd.
That means by proof
We
beyond
would have
reasonable
studied
doubt,
this
the
shit in
highest
school.
standard of
Like we
law.
would have like
So
this would have been
we
really
keep things
important.
quiet for lots of reasons
It will
in
be
the
studied.
beginning,
Like this is a
including
turning
that it's in the
point.
beginning, that our information is preliminary. We may turn out to be wrong, and we don't want to sully the reputation of people
Keeps
whose
using the
names
word
are
sully.
mentioned in an affidavit. Nor do we want to expose the investigative techniques that we used. Nor do we want to violate Rule 6E, the grand jury secrecy rule of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. So reflexively, the government is not thinking
Good
about
word.
transparency at this stage. They're thinking about the fact
Yeah,
that
they wanna
this
get
is
him.
early, that it's preliminary.
Yeah, that's
that
the most
things
important
may
thing. Like, as
change,
much as
and they're
this isn't
taking initial
entertainment,
investigative
guys.
steps.
Like, this is
Seeing what is
breaking
available to
news
see right
of a
now,
like very.
What's the likelihood that there are
It's just-
multiple individuals they're looking at?
We have to
who
remember
could
this isn't
ultimately
supposed to
charge
be
crimes?
this entertaining.
Yeah,
Like,
such a good
that's
question.
why this is
So,
fucked up.
A
Like, we're on the
search
edge of our
warrant
seat.
only
We
means
shouldn't
that you
be.
have
This should
probable
never have
cause to believe
happened.
A crime has been committed, and you'll find evidence of that crime in the place that you're looking. It doesn't mean Mr. Trump necessarily. It doesn't mean his chief of staff or his lawyers. It just means that you have evidence of a crime. So, to your question,
I want to make a comment too. His place, Mar-A-Lago, looks more like it's Boca than Palm
getting
Beach.
a search warrant to get evidence of
Same.
a crime. Because it's early in an investigation, there are probably numerous subjects. Logically, the different people who may have handled the information, and we don't even know what happened to all the information they handled. We know what the FBI recovered.
Yeah.
Is there stuff that wasn't recovered, or that remains behind, or that had been passed, God forbid?
Check his kids' places. You know, the ones that he appointed to like the highest like offices, like politically. Like, check it. Check their places. Check their kids' fucking beds. Like, tear the place apart like you would an apartment in the hood that you expected was a meth lab, right? Like, do it. Do what you do to everyone else, to them. It's
All right,
the
Chuck
writing's on the wall,
Rosenberg,
bruh.
thank you. We'll get, move past to the best we can those redactions and try to understand what this document tells us. That's going to be a continuing process. For now, that concludes our NBC News special report. I'll have much more tonight on NBC Nightly News.
Dang.
I'm Lester Holt. Thank you for watching.
Thank you,
everyone.
sir.
Good day.
Lester Holt, NBC News. I got work to do too, but like, yo! This is wild. And it shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. That's actually what's so problematic about this. Like, I shouldn't be so excited. You know, we're talking about someone who held the highest office, arguably, politically speaking, definitely in this hemisphere, but like potentially on the globe. Like legit, like U.S. politics actually, like, yes, like fine, it might not be the hegemon it used to be, granted, right? But it's still the United States. It's still a democracy that stands for the rest of the world as like a model of like what's supposed to be. You know, and even if it is imagination, even if it's a Disney story, even if it's a fairy tale that we were all told, democracy actually means something. Every single American vote means something. Every taxpayer dollar means something. To Trump, it meant diddly squat. It meant he could sell your secrets, your addresses, your ICQ codes from back in the day. Like, it meant he could sell all your personal information to fucking, I would bet, Russia, North Korea, since we know he was having an affair, at least by mail, with the North Korean leader, and probably China, I would suspect, definitely the Middle East, you know, a lot of Middle Eastern countries. Remember him touching the orb? Anyways, you know, it's not actually supposed to be like this at all. There's zero integrity in what's happening right now. And, you know, the worst part about this is, like, this is the tip of the iceberg. Remember when the Titanic hit that shit? Like, we only saw what we saw, but the reason why the Titanic went down is really what was below the surface. So, like, you know, this is problematic for international security. I'm sure, I was thinking this the other day, I'm sure Biden has received a lot of phone calls from concerned dignitaries, world leaders around the world. I can guarantee you Antonio Guterres is really keeping a close eye on this situation, because this is problematic. This is a security breach of actually the highest magnitude. I don't know if we've seen one this terrible. I don't think we have in my lifetime. Definitely not in the United States politics, that's for sure. And as I mentioned, the U.S. politics really does, you know, as we know, whether we like it or not, it's like if we're all kids in high school, right? And if each country in the world is a different kid in high school, the United States is supposed to be the leader, right? Like, figuratively speaking, like, they're supposed to be the popular kid. And, like, we just found out the popular kid been selling all our secrets. So no one's really safe, actually. That really sucks. It's not a good thing to realize, and like, I'm not happy about this at all, but like, am I enjoying watching Trump's demise? Absolutely, because I had to watch him put children in cages. I had to watch him separate families with zero plan of how to put them back together. I had to watch him shit all over human rights. I had to watch him, you know, the list goes on. We watched that for 4 years. Every day has 24 hours. 365 days in the year. He held that, like, I'm the most important person in the world in his head, right? Mentality. So if you look at it from that perspective, like I said, this Mar-A-Lago stuff is only the tip of the iceberg. We only see what we see, what's above the surface. But this shit is way worse. This shit is actually way worse, and whatever's below is gonna come out over time, because I just, please, FBI, DOJ, Biden, like, really arrange for all of his family members' places, including the children's rooms. You know, don't trample the toys, but you actually might want to check some of the toys. I'm dead serious. Like, there's secrets everywhere, and I got shit to do, so I gotta go. Love you all. Stay safe. Peace.